Thank you for that introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here. I'm really excited about it. Thanks for Helen, who's been my liaison really in making sure I arrive here on time, on the right date. And I apologise in advance that I have to leave because, as has already been mentioned, I'm actually chair of the Liverpool Fair Trade Steering Committee. So my family home's in Liverpool, my children and my wife live in Liverpool. She's an academic at Liverpool John Moores University, but I have a flat in York, so I'm here 3 or 4 nights a week, and then I go back. In my wife actually happens to be in Greyjoy on Sands tomorrow in a school doing fair trade work, so I think I've got a reasonable excuse. So I need to go back and look after the children. And it's very interesting. I'm a bit in awe about coming to Yorkshire and talking about fair trade, because you're a bit further advanced than we are in Lancashire. In fact, I received an email only a couple of days ago from my friend, good friend, Bruce Crowther in Garstown, saying we're really, really keen now on developing this idea of Lancashire becoming a fair trade county. And obviously he's got the idea from somewhere, I'm not quite sure where. So we're actually all going to a meeting in a couple of weeks' time at the Fig Tree in Garstown. If you ever get the chance to go, it's obviously a fair trade museum and a fair trade cafe, and a really, really nice place. And that's where we're going to hold our meetings to try and catch you up. That's the idea. Now, I guess where my journey starts, I think that's quite important, because even though I was involved right from the start in setting up Divine Chocolate and establishing Divine as a fair trade product, I was the one that, persuaded Sainsbury's and Tesco's and the Co-op to stop Divine, and then also persuade the Co-op to do their private label or label chocolate range with Divine. My journey really starts a long time before that. I come from a farming family in Sladen in Lancashire, which actually used to be Yorkshire, a long time ago before I was born. And I did agricultural economics at Newcastle University. I then quite unusually for an agricultural economics student, then went and did 2 years overseas, voluntary service overseas, after I graduated in Tanzania. And I've always been an Oxfam campaigner. So quite an unusual, I guess, if you know anything about Newcastle agricultural students, they're not usually Oxfam campaigners. So a bit against the grain. So what I'm going to talk about really is is to bring us up to date with where fair trade is globally. What have you all achieved from this amazing social movement? And a bit of history about the fair trade movement. Some of you may know it, some of you may not. And a little bit about my passion, which is my three favourite companies. Obviously Divine Chocolate, I'm a bit biased. Liberation Nuts, I've got some nice new samples for Liberation Nuts, and Cafe Direct. And what brings all those 3 companies together is that the farmers are owners in the companies. And that's why they're my favourite companies. So I just want to bring you up to date with those 3 companies, because they are finding it very challenging at the moment with the mainstreaming of fair trade. But it's important that I give you a flavour of what they're doing and why they're so special and should remain a special place in our hearts. So this is a bit of a silly. This is a newspaper article from the Liverpool Echo. So it's part of our fair trade campaign when it's in the career section. This is when I was working with Divine. But anyway, what you want to know about is what have we achieved? It's a fair trade movement. And this is just fair trade label, floor label sales globally in euros. And you can see that back in 2004, I don't know whether most of you here will remember back in 1998, the fair trade market in the United Kingdom was only worth about £16 million. And now it's worth £1.44 billion. So that just shows what we have achieved. That hasn't been done by a magic wand, it's been done by hard campaigning, by groups like this. But look at the effect of it. And so now, it's increasing all the time, but that's what we've achieved. And, more importantly, we're engaging with, if you see here, Fair Trade International System, the flow label, which is the most popular label in terms of sales. We're benefiting 1.3 million farmers globally, and working with nearly 1,200 different producer groups, most of them cooperatives, most of them dealing in commodities. So that's what we've achieved. and we should be very proud of that. But you know, part of my talk, history is a very useful thing to, you know, looking through the development of the social movement through the lens of history is a good way of thinking about what should we do in the future. And these are all the different fair trade marks. So this is the one that we focused on. You know, that's the one that I've showed you the sales of. But there are lots of other very important marks as well. I mean, this is my favourite one, World Fair Trade Organisation mark, which mainly deals in arts and crafts. And this one obviously deals mainly in food, drinks and clothing. And these other ones, this is a fair trade label from France, but was born out of the organic movement, EcoCert. They've just set up an office in the United States. A very interesting organisation, Fair for Life, which again is starting to develop. And this is the Fair Trade USA label, which I'm not going to talk about too much, although I could do in questions. And that was a splinter away from Fair Trade International back in 2011. And this is my, I guess, does anybody know which that one is? This particular label here. It's Alto Mercato, which is the CTM label from Italy. And they have their own national label. Yes, the Fair Trade International label, the floor label, exists in Italy, but this was the original label. And in the market in Italy, it's 50-50. So 50% of the sales are with Alto Mercato label, and 50% of them are with the floor label. It comes out of the communist movement and the Catholic Church, this particular label. Very strong, got 350 world shops. They're all run as cooperatives. Very, very interesting organisation in Italy. And that's the total. So if you add them all up together, obviously the fair trade floor label is the biggest, but you get 5.861 billion. So it's not a small market anymore. We've achieved a lot in a relatively, in historical terms, in a short space of time, if you think about it. So my next question is, when did fair trade start? When can you trace back the origins of fair trade to when and where? That's my next question. Anybody any ideas? No? That's why I'm glad I was thinking everybody will know the answer to this, but obviously not. Well, the Netherlands is a very, very important part of the story, but it's more recent than well, I'm going to go back to the 1940s. Yeah, that's what I'm going to go back to now. Take you on a journey all the way back to the 1940s, and I'm going to come back to that later. But it started in the United States with two organisations, one called 10,000 Villagers and one called Serve. And they both came out of the Mennonite Church, yeah, and this is Ruth Edna Baylor, who started dealing in tablecloths with Puerto Rican women, yeah, Puerto Rican refugee women. And she sold those tablecloths in church stalls on a Sunday. And so 1946, 10,000 Villagers set up, and 1949 is when Serve set up. And Serve stands for, let me get this right, I always forget this, Sales Exchange Refugee Rehabilitation. That's what it stands for. And Serve is an organisation that traded after the Second World War with refugees in Eastern Europe. Yeah. And it's still, if you go to the US, it's one of the biggest fair trade organisations in the US, apart from the mainstream ones. You know, but it's got shops, it's got a lovely catalogue, and Divine sell most of their, until they set up Divine US, their own organisation in the US, sold most of their Divine chocolate through Serve. And then in 1954, can anybody recognise this shop? Oxfam in Broad Street in Oxford, just opposite Balliol Street. So 1954, the kind of Oxfam set up this trade programme. And started to procure again with refugee groups in the main fairly traded products. So, and at the time, this time, these organisations were called alternative trade organisations. They weren't called fair trade. The word fair trade, or the phrase fair trade, didn't even exist. They were called alternative trade organisations. And then what happened? This is Artisans du Monde setting up in France in 1974 with Abbé Pierre, who also set up Emmaus, the homeless charity. And then this is my favourite organisation, as you can probably tell. 1985, Twin set up, Twin Trading in London. And Twin is the organisation that was responsible for setting up Café Direct, Divine Chocolate and Liberation. And does anybody know the story of Twin Trading? It was part of the GLC. And it was the GLC's economic trading, international trading arm, under Ken Livingstone. And Twin Trading decided that their motivation was to trade with all the states that the West wouldn't trade with. So that was good. It was exciting, wasn't it? So they traded with Cuba, they traded with Vietnam, they traded with the Nicaraguan Sandinistas in terms of Solidarity Coffee, and that was the main reason why Margaret Thatcher tried to shut down the GLC. This is one of the factors. Obviously, she'd run out of patience with Ken Livingstone, and but cleverly, what Ken did, he spun off Twin Trading before they shut down the GLC, and he gave them a small grant to go and set up. And so if you know people like Robin Murray, who were the brains behind organisations like Cafe Direct, then he was a twin at that time. So Michael Barrett Brown is another person who was very influential in the history of the fair trade movement, who was in the GLC and then went to Twin Trading. So I mean, you can see that the fair trade, history of fair trade, is political and it's religious. You know, it's faith working with solidarity. I think that's very exciting. And then in 1987, you've got Tradecraft set up. 1989, you had Elton Mercato in Italy. And then, you quite rightly said, the 1989, the first fair trade mark, the Max Havelaar mark, set up in the Netherlands, with two people very influential, Nick Ruzen and also Frans van den Hoef, who was a Dutch missionary working with coffee cooperatives in Mexico. And that's the first label. And where did the term fair trade come from? 1986, Twin held a meeting in London, a big group, Oxfam, Christian Aid, blah, blah, blah. And Michael Barrett Brown, in debate, stood up and said, I'm fed up with all this international trade. It's so unfair. What we need is fair trade. And everybody looked round at him. And it was kind of a moment of when people just realised that's what we were doing, that was the term. And it spread around the movement really, really quickly, this term fair trade. And hence the first fair trade mark in 1989. This is when certification started. We didn't have certification before. It wasn't until 1989. And then the rest is history. And these early people were often called suitcase traders. So Ruth Edna Baylor this was her suitcase. And that's the serve. And then what you found in the 1990s to 2000 is the development of these networks. 1990 was the WFTO mark. The News is the network for world shops in Europe, and EFTA, European Fair Trade Association, and then in 1991, Cafe Direct. So they started these organisations that Cafe Direct was coming together of Tradecraft, Equal Exchange, Twin and Oxfam. All own 25%, all put in £7,500 to set up this. At that time it was a lot of money for them. But the Cafe Direct was different because it wanted to be in the mainstream. It wanted to develop fair trade products that weren't in the alternative trade only, but were also going into the mainstream. And so fair trade started to go through a change. But this was only in the United Kingdom. This mainstreaming started in the United Kingdom. So the UK is quite unusual if you compare it to other European states like Switzerland, where it went into the retailers first of all. These interesting social businesses set up. I call them social enterprises. And then what happened? Divine was launched in 1998, November 1998. And what was unusual about these organisations such as Divine was that they, to move the farmers further up the value chain, they decided to make them owners in the brand. So Divine Chocolate has 45%. Copper Cocoa, the cooperative in Ghana that grow the cocoa for Divine, have 45% share in the company. So it means it moves the farmer further up the, because the value is in the brand. It isn't in the bean, it's in the brand. So it was a way of delivering more development to the farmer cooperatives. And this is very, very unusual. This hasn't happened in other places in Europe. It hasn't happened in the United States. It's something very, very unusual that Twin instigated. Yeah, it was their idea, and they were the brains behind it. And then what happened, around year 2000, year 2001, so we're getting more now to recent history, it's still the fair trade market's only worth about £26 million, is that these companies started to persuade mainstream retailers to switch their own label ranges of, in this case, chocolate, to fair trade. So this is Co-op head office in Manchester by Victoria Station. In their food laboratory, a difficult job, somebody has to do it. I used to hate that job, you know, when you stand there all day and taste chocolate for a living. But what we're doing, what's unusual about this, is that you've got the MD of Divine, Sophie, on the left, who's still the MD of Divine, Sophie Trounshall, and she's probably been to York to speak before, I'm sure she has. Terry Hushton, who's the head of buying at Co-op. Very, very influential guy. Obviously, you know the person in the middle. And this guy on the right was Mr. Ohemi Tiniers, who was the managing director of Kwiapa Cocoa in Ghana. And so that's amazing. The fact that you can get these people together, you know, the farmer organisation with the retailer, yeah, talking about switching £3 million worth of business, which is the Co-op's own label, private label chocolate business, to Divine. All bought from Kwiapa in Ghana. Now, when I was an agricultural student, I studied tropical agriculture as one of my modules. And even this is in the academic journals of tropical agriculture. It used to refer to cocoa farmers as peasants and tree minders. Yeah? I mean, I remember reading them. So look at this: business partners, working with a mainstream retailer in the United Kingdom, talking about. And guess who manufactured? Because what was also interesting about this business with the Co-op is that guess who manufactured the Co-op own label chocolate before Divine did? Anybody any ideas? No, Kraft Jacobs Schuchard. So you can imagine the head of marketing at Kraft in the Midlands saying, and the sales rep saying, "Well, just what's the business in the Co-op, boss? Who to? Divine Chocolate." I mean, you can imagine the conversation. I'm sure it was more like the hair drag treatment. So that was a great story. That was, and then what's happened? To cut a long story short, we've got this mainstreaming. Whether we like it or not, and I'm sure we could. I mean, I'm on the. Some of you know my most recent academic work. It's kind of critical of the dilution of fair trade, and so I think this is what we set out to achieve. Although I think we probably, in terms of certification, not negotiated our cards strong enough, and I know that. So anyway, we can have that discussion at the end. But you can't knock that achievement. It's quite significant, and so what fair trade has done, it's done nothing else. It's improved behaviour of the corporates. That's what it's done. It's improved their behaviour. It's improved their standards. You might argue some of it's greenwashing or whatever, but it's actually improved it's actually put them under the spotlight, and that's you guys that have done that. And running parallel to that is this amazing movement of fair trade towns, fair trade churches, fair trade counties, if not. But not only in the United Kingdom. Yes, it started in the United Kingdom in 2001, but it also spread around the world. And I was lucky enough to go to the European Fair Trade Conference in Poznan in November last year. And I think Oslo is just about to take place, if it hasn't already taken place, which is this year's European Fair Trade Towns Conference. It's just amazing, isn't it? And it has actually pulled through sales and changed the procurement, public procurement, which is this misty world which nobody wants to go into. 25-year contracts for this, that, and the other, and very poor quality, food quality. And so fair trade has actually changed that world of the public procurement as well. So let me just show you something. This is a bit of a poetic license. What I'm going to show you here is the development of fair trade in the UK. So this is a basket. Each shopping basket is worth £20 million of fair trade product. All these are different distribution routes, from alternative trade organisations right through to bananas. So I'm just going to do it really quickly. So this is what happens. 1998, only 24 million. Can you see? Not so long ago. And then this is obviously Divine into supermarkets. This is all label. Divine or Liberation doing Sainsbury's nuts there, and start to build it up. Can you get that kind of picture? That's what we've done. Controversial. So, this one is a controversial supply chain. This is Tesco's own label coffee, which isn't. They don't pay the license fee for the fair trade mark. It's their third-party supplier that pay the license fee. So they have said to their third-party supplier, we want an own label fair trade coffee. You go and do it, but we want it at the same price. So what I do in my academic research is unveil, because not all fair trade is the same. That's what I try to do. So Divine fair trade chocolate is very different from Nestlé's Kit Kat. And what I try to do in my academic research is unveil the different value chains and different distribution routes in terms of how fair trade gets to market. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, obviously, chocolate for a while, if I may, if you can indulge me for a few minutes. Am I okay for time? So, this brand has come a long way. I remember when it was purple, do you remember? And it was horizontal, and it had a heart, big red heart in the middle, and it was all creased because the mould was too thin and too big. But this is how it's, and we can see it there, so I don't need to go on. It's a very quality, it's delicious chocolate, but it's got a very, very political message as well. And we have to go, to start this story, we have to go all the way to West Africa. And some of you probably have worked, if not lived there, and have been there to visit. And this is its mission. So it's quite an unusual organisation, Divine, because these are its shareholders. And so you bring those people together, and they're quite powerful, aren't they, if you think of all the organisations. And Body Shop, remember, was also an original investor. They had 14% shares until L'Oreal took them over, and Gordon Roddick managed to get the shares back to the farmers before they took them over. So that was a good piece of work by him, Gordon Roddick, Anita's husband. So, obviously, Copper has got 45% share, and that's the mission. And what was interesting, I don't know whether you know this story, about, you imagine, back in 1998 going to the bank, we couldn't get a bank loan to set up the company. We needed about £400,000 because we needed to rent an office in London, we needed to make the first production run, and we needed to employ some staff, and we needed to appoint a distributor. So we needed about £400,000, and we couldn't get a bank to agree. I mean, you imagine it. These people coming along, never worked in the chocolate industry before, so facing the anti-apartheid movement and the film industry. I'd worked in animal health after I came back from VSO, veterinary pharmaceuticals. And Twin were there, Paul and Tiffin from Twin. And we went around different banks and we said, we want to set up this fair trade chocolate company. Our product's going to be 30% more expensive than the competition. Who are your competitors, they said? Mars, Cadbury and Nestlé. So you can imagine it wasn't a very convincing business plan. But we managed to get the NatWest Bank to agree to a loan as long as we could provide a loan guarantor. So we couldn't really expect the board to Gordon and Anita and Roddick to say, would you give me your property as a loan guarantor? Obviously that would be unfair. And so we went to DFID. New Labour had just come into power. Claire Shaw was the International Development Secretary. And in their white paper for international development, fair trade was mentioned every other page. She looked at the cocoa market and said it wasn't working for producers. She used a European loophole in terms of legislation, and she intervened. And after 6 months of negotiations, DFID agreed to be the first time ever, a government department had agreed to be a loan guarantor mechanism for a new startup. Now it's a BIS policy. Yeah? So it's quite interesting, isn't it? And this is cocoa, so I'm going to kind of do a bit of agricultural agronomy now. So cocoa is interesting in that it grows on the trunk of the tree, and this is what it's like when it's ripe. It's about the size of a rugby league football, and you cut it open. Well, it falls on. You knock it off the tree with sticks, and this is what it looks like at harvest time. It's harvested twice a year, March and November in Ghana, and this is what it's like at the ground level. And this is what, when you cut it open. When I first went to Ghana, I saw all these people walking around with these swords on the shoulders, these cutlass knives, and I thought, oh, this is a bit scary. But what they were doing, they were harvesting cocoa. So they cut it open with a knife, and that's what it looks like inside. It's kind of sticky, marshmallowy, and you can taste it, and it's sweet. A little bit sour and sweet at the same time. But it looks really interesting, doesn't it? You want to squeeze it and feel it, and that's how cocoa starts. That's how the origins of divine chocolate. And then you ferment it. So the cocoa tree grows in the canopy of the plantain tree in the rainforest. And so these are plantain leaves. And what you do is you just put the cocoa beans on the plantain leaf and you cover it with plantain leaves and you ferment for about 10 to 14 days. And that's where you get the quality. If you ferment for only 7 days, the quality is affected. If you ferment for too many days, like 17, it's also affected. So optimum is 10 to 14 days. You take it back to the villages. This is a village called Fanasadomi-Abra in northeast Ghana, about 3 hours drive from Kumasi, which is the second largest town, I would say, in Ghana. And this is drying in the sun on the basket-raised shells, and then, I do have a picture of it, and then it goes brown and dry, and you sack it, put it into bags, and it goes to the port and then it comes to Europe. It's given a fair trade stencil in the village centre, in Quapaw village societies. And away you go. This village is about 3 hours drive, Fanasadomi-Abra. It's about 3 hours drive from Kumasi, even in a 4x4 vehicle. Even in the dry season, it's 3 hours drive. And it's called Fanasadomi-Abra. And if you translate it from Twi language into English, it means you'll come here if you love me. That's what it means. And you realise that actually that's very appropriate for that particular place. There's a local gold mine very near, run by the London Gold Mining Company, which often pollutes the watercourses around the village, and you often get children dying in this village every year from gold poisoning, egg boils into the water. And so the fair trade premium here was used to build a water well for clean water in the village, and the impact of that was very, very significant. I do have a photo of that, but I don't have it in this presentation, I'm sorry. I was thinking I needed to press on. So liberation. What's unusual about liberation, I brought some nuts with me, is that it made a mistake. It hasn't really engaged with the fair trade campaign, the fair trade time movement type of thing. It made a mistake when it was launched. It focused too much on music festivals and blah, blah, blah. It didn't really engage with core supporters like you. But it's a very interesting company. It's 42% of it is owned by the International Nut Producers Cooperative, which is made up of 12 different nut cooperatives from the Amazon rainforest, Brazil nut cooperatives, cashew nut cooperatives in India, Kerala, FATAC, run by Tommy Matthews. Some of you may have seen Tommy Matthews speak. And also NASFAM in Malawi, who grow the groundnuts, supply the groundnuts for this product, cashew and peanuts. And it's a very, very interesting organisation. And these now are available in Waitrose. So if you're rich enough to shop in Waitrose, then or buy them in your support your fair trade shop. They're new. They've just been rebranded because I think Liberation also had a problem with its packaging. But I just wanted to make a point that they're also from the same stable as Divine. Very interesting organisation, and based out of Twin. And finally, again, I was lucky enough to go to Uganda in March this year to the Cafe Direct Producers Conference with 18 different cooperatives were there who have got these very special relationships with Cafe Direct. Some of you will be shareholders like me. But I just wanted to tell you that Cafe Direct has struggled over the past couple of years. If I go back to 2007, its turnover was £23 million. Yeah? And now its turnover today is about 13 million. But it made some big mistakes, and I just want to. It's a bit of a marketing mistake they made. They launched its packaging in April 2009, and this is true. This is completely on the nail. And I was at a shareholder meeting, and I saw the who went to. Does anybody who goes to the shareholder meetings here? AGMs. You have been, yeah. And when they unveiled this at the shareholder meeting, I thought, oh my lord. I thought, it just looks like a market garden product. What are they doing? And they launched that in April 2009. Their monthly turnover was about 1.7, 1.8 million. And within 3 months, their monthly turnover had gone down to £700,000. Just in the space of 3 months. But look what happened. This was the other product. So and this is a great example of how Nothing to do with fair trade, it's just to do with poor marketing. This product is Tea Direct. Now, we bought Tea Direct right from the start. It's my wife's favourite tea. Tea Direct used to look like this. Yeah? It was green. And it changed to that. And I've been buying Tea Direct since it was launched. Even I went into the supermarket to find it and couldn't find it, even though it was there. Because you imagine a supermarket shelf, it's white, isn't it? You see, the white background for tea and coffee and chocolate doesn't work. You need rich colours. You know, it just doesn't work. And so, even to the trained eye, people who bought Tea Direct for years and years could not find it on the supermarket shelf. And their sales went down because people couldn't find it. And tea is very habitual. If you change, it's very difficult to get you back. And so that's what they're struggling with now, is going back. Now, they are recovering. They've got some good new products coming out. Some really nice high quality instant coffees, more different origin, and also espresso pods and all that kind of thing. So they are recovering, and they've got a good new team there now. So that's their new packaging. Still my favourite packaging was 5065. Do you remember it? Path Up the Mountain. So anyway, I'm harking back to the old days now. I've only got 5 minutes left. So I'm going to finish it there. So I wanted some time for questions. So what I tried to give you is a quick where we are with fair trade, the historical perspective, what you've achieved, and a little bit about my 3 favourite companies. And hopefully you've found that interesting. So I'm open to questions now. Anybody got any questions? Because I've got about 4 minutes left. Yeah,
so what's the difference between the fair trade and I've forgotten the one with the alligator, or Rainforest Alliance? What's the basic difference?
Well, I think the two, the Rainforest Alliance is very much about management of the rainforest. It's environmental. And you don't have to pay a price premium, you don't have to pay a social premium. It's more focused on if I was being flippant, it's more focused on the trees and the plants rather than people.
Do the farmers benefit with the Rainforest Alliance though?
They might get a better price, but they're not guaranteed a better price. Yeah, and so these farmers groups that are partners with Cafe Direct are also looking at Rainforest Alliance certification because it's another distribution route for them. And so, but there are significant differences between the two. It's not about standards. It's more about meeting certain kind of quality dimensions.
Now you're a big organisation, how do you police the sources? Do you ever throw people out because they've turned corrupt and they've changed the conditions that they started off?
I mean, I don't work for Fair Trade International, but they do have a very strong network of in-country representatives who do annual monitoring. So not only the northern companies are monitored in terms of their accounts, but also the producers, and they have suspended producer groups before. Quite a few producer groups. It's quite controversial when they do it, but they have done it. So they are quite strong in that respect. It's probably the most policed, monitored certification system I know actually, and that's not easy to do because it's a global system. Good question. Must be some others. So you're just itching to eat more chocolate.
You're not just being actually involved in the trade side of things.
I do miss that. I do miss that buzz, if you will, of making that direct difference. But I do still do a lot of work with these 3 companies. So I was at the Cafe Direct Producers Conference. I'm doing a talk October the 2nd on chocolate. Yeah, I think it's on the. So I still do very close. I'm very good friends with Sophie at Divine. So I actually the Liverpool Food Festival was a month ago in Sefton Park in Liverpool, and I volunteered on the stand. So I was there for 2 days. So I still. So that's where I get my shopkeeping. Kind of exchanging money. It's quite good there.
Talking about fair trade clothing, and I think that all the events in Bangladesh and
Yes.
So, how strong is the movement to increase fair trade in clothing?
Yeah, I think People 3 are probably the organisation's support. I mean, they do some very, very good work, and I think their clothing is improving in terms of its design and its materials. I mean, they're a really interesting organisation, do so much good work, but they're only small organisation, and obviously these, if you watch that programme Panorama documentary on Monday night, which is Dying for a Bargain, it was quite horrific, wasn't it? Isn't it? Yeah, it's terrible. So you can't, I think you can't do enough, you know, I mean, big campaigning is still a very important weapon in putting pressure on these big multinationals, because it's too easy to say, oh, don't know, it's been subcontracted down. If Panorama can find out, surely the big multinational with all its resources can find out. That's my opinion. Yeah.
You said something about reservations.
Sorry, well, I'll take this question and then a question.
The reservations about mainstreaming and its effect on outlets. You said a bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I always buy my fair trade products in either the local fair trade shop or the Oxfam shop, because I know that you can get the range. If you go into Tesco's, if you go into Sainsbury's, you can only get 1 or 2 fair trade products. They're not really committed. They're more a kind of, you know, it's kind of more of a enlightened self-interest more than anything. So I would always encourage people, even if it takes an extra journey, to go and buy your products where it makes a difference. And even though they're more expensive, it doesn't really, for me, it's important to support them, because those supermarkets come in and out of fair trade. They might stock a product 1 week and a month later not stock it. I guess my favourite supermarket is probably Booths, because it stocks all the Divine range, stocks all the most of the Cafe Direct range. It's probably the only supermarket that does do that in terms of Divine. It's got all 10 flavours on the shelf. So. But they're a Lancashire company, I think. No, you don't.
What about the co-op?
Yeah, the co-op as well. Yeah, but I think the co-op is it's had a lot of change of policy, change of buyers, and it's very difficult. And I don't know whether you know Brad Hill is a fair trade marketing person. He's very, very good. And I think fair trade the co-op's got some new management now, and he's back on the right track again. So yeah. This question is, sorry, forgetting my learned colleague from the University of York.
I just wonder if there's any areas that you think haven't yet got fair trade sort of products there, but could have, because obviously there are some where you just can't get fair trade produce. Or
Yeah.
someone mentioned clothing, obviously that's a more recent
Yeah.
thing. Are there any areas that you think are kind of the next fair trade areas?
I think it's a really good question, isn't it? Because we all think some fair trade town groups think their job is done, think they've done their job. But actually, there's a lot of places you can go to where you can't get fair trade products. So I like you, look at this, it's great that you're not stopping campaigning, because our job isn't done. You go into Tesco's and you might only be able to find 3 or 4 different fair trade products. It's a joke, really.
Branches of Tesco. The little branches.
Nothing, completely nothing. And so our job is far from done. I think that's important. So there's lots of deserts, fair trade deserts, public procurement in some cities. Certainly, still, I still think the supermarkets. I mean, they are. We've kind of taken our eye off the ball there, I think. And certainly the discounters and independent coffee shops. So some of them have got Aroma Coffee here. They're obviously a fair trade coffee shop. I think there's quite a lot of independent coffee shops still not fair trade. There's a few in York actually. So it's quite restaurants. You can do a lot of interesting things in restaurants and bars, hotels. So better breakfast places. You probably do. I know you do a great job here in Europe, but you can never stop campaigning. I think. Take one more question maybe.
I've heard that there's a big difference in terms of fair trade products. For example, if you look at the Colt 99, they're the fair trade product, but if you look at the Sainsbury's Basics tea bags, which is also fair trade, they're not quite as great for the producers. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think, like I said, there's different ways of different value chains within the fair trade system. I mean, if you wanted me to come back at another time to talk about mainstreaming, because my most recent academic paper in Business History Journal, it looks at the development of mainstreaming, and it looks at the dilution of all the fair trade principles. So in 2008 and 2009, the standard of pre-financing producer groups was withdrawn from the fair trade system. That was one thing. And there was another standard dropped in 2000, traceability was dropped in 2009. And it's when Cadbury's and Nestle came into the system, so they negotiated that out of the system. And so there are different, what I'm trying to say to you, there are different forms of fair trade. So always support the 100% fair traders and the original pioneers, because if we don't support them, they'll be cannibalised in the mainstream. And that's very, I mean, you're doing that anyway. I can't organise a fair trade store in Liverpool. I would feel very uncomfortable if I saw Cadbury's Dairy Milk or Nestle on stone. That's only my opinion. But some people will say, well, that's what we've achieved. We've made them do that. We wanted. So the movement is divided. But it's contested. It's complex, and you've got to have that. It's good to have that debate. But you can see which side of the fence I sit on. Thank you.
Okay, well, so thank you very much for